Hi friends, it feels so good to be sitting here and talking to you guys again. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Plant Peace podcast. If you're new here, let me just give you a little bit of a rundown. So in this podcast, we are reading chapter by chapter through my first book. It's called Plant Peace. It's right here. You can purchase a copy of it yourself if you'd like to go through it. I highly recommend it. However, we are going to be going through everything that the book contains within these podcasts, and I'm also elaborating on some information, just adding some commentary, doing some interviews with people with relevant knowledge and background on what we're discussing. And this is largely an animal rights podcast, so that's kind of what the book Plant Peace centers around. I opened a restaurant a while ago with the mission to then start an eco village, and turns out a restaurant is not the best way to raise money, and so the restaurant didn't end up working out the best, but it was an amazing experience, and I am super, super grateful to have had it. And it actually feeds into something that happened to me today. So today, I was just like walking into the store, and this guy walks up to me with actually this bill I have in my pocket with this $20 bill, and he's like, "Hey, can I give this to you?" And I was like, "For sure, yeah, you can." And I don't know if I asked why or if he just started explaining it, but he was like, "Yeah, I owe this to you." And I was like, "Why do you owe this to me?" And he was just like, "Well, when you had a restaurant, you let me like have a free meal, and I never came back and paid you. And so here's the money I owe you." And I was just like, "Oh my God, thank you so much." And so I went in, I got my thing, I came out, and I was walking to my car, and he was like pulling away and just like honked and smiled and waved at me, and I was just like so touched. Like, this literally just like made my day. And I'm gonna put this $20 in my money manifestation jar that this camera is actually sitting on top of right now. But that was just so cool because I've been like actively working on bringing in, abundance into my life, and then like, "Hey, here's this money I owe you from like a year ago," and I'm just like, "Thanks, that means literally so much." So it was just so touching. It was just so sweet. So the restaurant is still blessing me to this day, even though it isn't open anymore. But yeah, so I'm working on posting an episode every week. There was a bit of a mishap when I was in Hawaii. And then I got back and made an episode, and turns out I had COVID when I made that episode. I didn't find out till a couple of days later or the next day or something. I thought I was just super jet lagged from coming back and being super sad because Hawaii felt like home, and this feels less like home now, but more so now that I'm not actively sick and have been here for a minute. But it turns out it was not just me being tired. I had COVID. I woke up with a just crazy high fever at like 3 a.m. and super bad body aches. And they really sucked. It was bad, and I just kind of knew. I was like, "Oh no, I have this." And I managed to not get it for the past 2 years. But no, I got it. So yeah, the past 2 weeks, I haven't had it like super severe. Like, I just had the fever the one day. And then after that, I've just been heavily congested and like super fatigued, and a few other things, but those were kind of the main things. And so my voice might sound a little bit different to you. It's better than it was. Last Friday, Saturday, I was considering making an episode, but my voice was just like so not myself because I was so congested, and I just did not have the energy to talk at a camera for a while because my throat was also hurting. So I'm like super grateful to actually be feeling good now. Like, the past couple days have been the first days since returning that I'm like, wow, I feel like a functioning, healthy human. There's only like a few, I have some occasional coughs, and my throat's still not 100% and I'm a bit congested, but like overall, I feel good and I have energy and motivation to do things. And so that's like so wonderful. And I feel very, very grateful. And I'm working on getting back on my self-care routine because completely went out the window with COVID. Like, I was just resting, which I know is important, but I wasn't doing any yoga, like no, not even light stretching. I wasn't drinking enough water for a while. Like, I could have taken more vitamins, coulda, shoulda, woulda, but I did what I did, and I tried what I felt was my best at the time. But now I'm feeling better, and I'm very, very happy to be feeling better. And I have an idea that I kind of want to run by you guys before we actually get into the purpose of this podcast, because I I enjoy this so much. Like, I enjoy talking to a camera and having the potential to reach like a lot of people and have conversations with people I normally perhaps wouldn't. Um, and as much as I love my book and I love the content of my book, it's not always the most like happy content to be speaking about, because it's like severe animal neglect and abuse, you know? So as much as it's important to me to be spreading awareness about that, it's not also necessarily what I like super enjoy talking about. I am right now working on another book. It is completely unrelated content, but also a little bit related because there's going to be strong animal rights themes throughout it. But it's called Akua, and that is the Hawaiian word for God, as in creator of all. And I'm not going to get into describing the entirety of the book, but it's a concept I've been working on since middle school. So it's been just like brewing in my head for a decade, and I finally feel like it's ready to come to light, and I'm so excited about it. And I'm thinking about it constantly in my dreams. The past 2 nights have inspired ideas for it, and so I'm so excited about this. But one of the things I'm wanting to do for the book is actually dive deeply into a lot of the world's major and also minor religions, because this is a book that I want to encompass like a lot of information that is like true and resonates with a lot of different people. And I want it to be very like culturally expansive and like connecting. So I want to be reading a lot of the sacred religious texts from around the world. And I was thinking it might be fun to have a podcast where I'm not necessarily reading them out loud, but like reading them myself and then coming on here and talking to you guys about them, and just kind of having a little bit of a discussion with it. So yeah, that's my idea. If you like it, let me know. If not, just keep it to yourself, honestly. But yeah, I might do that. So that's in my brain, that's in my thinker. But you know, circling all the way around to why we're here today. Today we're going to be reading about several different animals. We're going to be reading about sheep and horses and rabbits and foxes and mink. And I think that's probably going to be where we stop today. Just because my energy levels still aren't 100%, nor is my voice. And so I want to take it a little easy. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And if you guys have any questions throughout any of this, you know, write them down, like send them to me. I would love to answer your questions on this podcast and also personally between us. Yeah. Yes, just thanks for being here. All right. Sheep. This is a resident in Iowa farm sanctuary, which I am so excited to go back to now that I don't have COVID. Okay. Despite popular rhetoric, sheep are very clever animals. A study in 2001 by Keith Kendrick found that sheep can recognize 50 individual faces for more than 2 years. This outlasts the memory of many humans. In a different study, they showed the ability to navigate out of a maze and even quicken their pace when greeted by their fellow sheep at the exit. In addition to being smart, they form close bonds and long-term friendships with one another. They are also quite the knowledgeable foragers. When they feel ill, they'll seek out plants to self-medicate with in order to feel better. They are joyful, playful, and some even have lifelong preferences of same-sex partners, about 8% of them in fact. Prior to human intervention, sheep grew the perfect amount of wool to keep them protected from extreme weather temperatures. During the molting season, some people would pluck the wool naturally shedding from the sheep. Then shears were invented and everything changed. Humans began selectively breeding and keeping sheep for maximum wool production and stealing the thing that was supposed to protect these creatures. According to the United Nations, there are 1.2 billion sheep in the world. China is the largest producer of sheep with around 200 million of them, and Australia produces a quarter of the world's wool, having about 68 million sheep. A general flock nowadays consists of thousands of sheep. This obviously makes it profitably impossible to give each sheep tender love and care before stealing from them. During lambing season in Australia, between 10 to 15 million baby lambs die of starvation, neglect, and exposure. Often these are hypothermic deaths within the first 48 hours of their lives. 10 to 15 million baby lambs largely are freezing to death in the first 2 days of their lives. To offset this financial loss for the farmers, they breed them to produce more and more lambs. The most common type of sheep raised in Australia is the Merino, which is a breed known for their wrinkly skin. This is good for the industry because it means more wool. It's bad for the sheep because irresponsible shearers, who are typically paid by volume and not by hour, rush to take all their wool and are more likely to injure the sheep. Aside from the cuts and open wounds caused by shearing practices, undercover footage has shown workers punching, kicking, and standing on the throat of sheep. Some sheep die from this abuse. These wrinkly skinned sheep can also die of heat exhaustion in the summer due to their lack of proper insulation. On the other hand, they can die due to freezing temperatures of being shorn in the winter months. For those with wrinkles, often urine and moisture is trapped between the skin flaps, which attracts flies to lay eggs in them. When these eggs hatch, they emerge as maggots and can eat the sheep alive. A process known as molesing, I'm unsure if I'm saying that correctly. Molesing is done to try to prevent this, which is literally carving large portions of their skin and flesh off their bodies. This process is obviously extremely painful for the animal. Molesing is often done within the first 2 to 12 weeks of life, as are other painful procedures such as tail docking and castration. Once the survivors are no longer economically viable, they are sent to slaughter. This typically happens between the age of 5 to 6. To put this into perspective, their natural lifespan generally ranges from 10 to 12 years old. As a whole, the wool industry is the meat industry. They are not mutually exclusive. Just like every other animal agriculture industry, sheep are forcibly impregnated so that the cycle of abuse may continue. Their babies may be used so that humans can eat their legs and livers. Lambs, which are baby sheep, are often shorn before being slaughtered at just 6 to 8 months old. A majority of all sheep are killed before their first birthday. Many of them have had to endure being jammed into a ship and exported live overseas to the Middle East or North America for slaughter. Poor babies. It's sad because we have genetically manipulated sheep again and again and again and again and again so that they are reliant on humans for survival now. The humans that are their oppressors, the humans that are exploiting them at every turn for everything that they have, for their babies, for their fur, which is their wool, for their flesh, for their existence. It's deeply unfortunate that animals are viewed as commodities and not as sentient beings that deserve the right to their own body, just like we do. And that is a very prevalent issue in our next animal, which is horses. This is a picture I took of a horse near the Grand Tetons. And just such a beautiful creature. I was very, very saddened though, because it appeared as if they were all used for like horseback rides around the mountains, and I'm gonna dive into a bit why I am ethically against that in a moment. But yeah, let's just get into that, and I will elaborate as I feel needed. Horses used to run free on grassy plains with their families. They are nomadic grazers and can spend up to 20 hours a day munching on grass. Wild horses live in herds of about a dozen. Mares, female horses, carry their young within them for 11 months before giving birth. In dangerous situations, the lead mare will direct the herd to safety, while the head stallion, male, will stay behind to fight. Those who are hurt are protected by the herd and on average can live to be 40 years old. While this may come as a surprise to many people, horses are classified as livestock in the United States and many other nations. The history of horse exploitation is vast and expansive, ranging from warfare to agriculture to entertainment to transportation and food. Humans have eaten horses for thousands of years, and nowadays those who consume their flesh have been calling it chevaline. Chevaline? I think it's chevaline, I'm going to say that. An article in The Atlantic titled "The Troubled History of Horse Meat in America" extensively discusses this complex subject. One piece of information I pulled from the article that is particularly disturbing is that in 1997, the Los Angeles Times broke the news that 90% of the Mustangs removed from the range by the Bureau of Land Management had been sold on for meat by their supposed adopters. Literally rounding up wild horses and sending them to slaughter. Okay, I know I'm about to talk about this more, or at least I think I am, but this is actively happening. Like, some of the last remaining wild horses are being round up and held in either government holding bureaus, or a lot of times people that put their horses up for adoption or for free or for really, really like cheap on the internet, they're bought up by people who then send them to slaughter because they make more money off of them that way. So I don't think that like horses have more right to live than do cows, for example. I think it's disgusting when this happens to both types of animals, but I think in the United States, at least, people have a particular view of horse, and it's not as food. It's more of as a companion or transportation. But just to be aware, if you have a horse and you don't want them anymore, if you're gonna adopt them out, make sure they're going to an actual family. Like, an actual family that's going to take care of them and love them, and not someone who's going to send them to slaughter. All right. Also, fuck the government for doing that. Okay, anyways, to clarify, these are wild horses rounded up, captured, and sold for slaughter. This was followed by an action from the Animal Liberation Front, who burned down an Oregon horse abattoir, which is a slaughterhouse. It was never rebuilt, and the activists were charged as terrorists. This was then followed by activists who took non-arsonistic approaches that eventually led to the Horse Slaughter Prevention Act. In the United States, horses are still shipped off to be slaughtered in our neighboring countries of Canada and Mexico. Approximately 36,000 horses died as a result of this in 2020 alone. In Europe, more than 100,000 horses are slaughtered every year for consumption. In Australia, this number is around 30 to 40,000. In the United States, horses are also commonly used for racing and riding. Before getting into horse racing, which is inherently cruel, I would like you to consider if you would be comfortable being someone's property, being taught to submit to them and allow them to put a ton of gear in your mouth and on top of you so that they may sit on your back while you trot around for a while. I personally would not be okay with this, and I don't think that most horses are either. Horses are rode in people's backyards, on trails, in rodeos, and on racetracks. They're also used in logging and other labor-intensive industries. While many don't see any issue with keeping a horse, caring for them, and riding them, it really boils down to consent. Horses have virtually no way to consent to being ridden or owned. You can have a deep bond with a horse and care for them without getting on their back. Now, let's get into racing. On average, 24 horses die every week in the U.S. racetracks. PETA released a video called Horse Racing, Drugs and Death that clearly displays the violence in this industry. I highly recommend watching it. In this video, they reveal what was uncovered in a several-month-long investigation. The first human being investigated was Steve Asmussen. I don't care. One of the most successful thoroughbred racehorse trainers. He also sports the most rule and drug violations of all major U.S. horse trainers. The undercover investigator found that performance-enhancing drugs were regularly given to these horses that allowed them to train through all their injuries and pain. Some of their most prized horses had their hooves degraded to nubs from all of the labor forced upon them. These horses, used purely for monetary gain, are treated as disposable commodities from birth to death. To this industry, that's all they are. They always have another horse who has been forcibly bred into existence to replace the last one who died. For many who are deemed no longer profitable, their existence will end in a slaughterhouse. To further the general abuse of this industry, undocumented workers were used as labor for horse care. They were paid very little, and some literally slept in the barns. The process of being sent to slaughter is terrifying, regardless of what your species may be. Horses are shipped or trucked to abattoirs for periods of 24 plus hours without any food, water, or proper rest. Many horses are injured and some die in this horrific journey. Horses are very skittish and untrusting of most humans for valid reasons, making the process of stunning them difficult. Due to this, many are struck several times in an attempt to render them unconscious, which often doesn't work at all. This means they are fully aware as they bleed out and This means that many are fully aware as they bleed out and are dismembered. This is unfortunately the fate for many wild horses who have been caught. Many horses who are unwanted former pets, race horses, and labor horses. Kill buyers often purchase horses off of Craigslist or auction houses to be shipped to slaughter. It's common for the Amish community who uses horses to carry them around. You may even see them on highways in rural areas, and work in fields to ship them off to be killed when no longer useful. In rodeos, several horses have been documented snapping their spines and necks in horrific events. Horses used for bucking often suffer tendon and bone problems in their legs, as well as severe back pain as it's not in their nature to move in such a manner. They are forced to buck the same way cows are, by tightening a strap around their flank, which causes them to frantically try to get it off. In the wild, horses would buck when humans tried to domesticate them because they wanted nothing to do with us. Now, after generations of taming, they have to force these horses to appear wild in order to entertain a crowd. Horses deserve their freedom, just like we do. Rabbits. Rabbits are social, intelligent animals who naturally live in forests, fields, and nowadays neighborhoods. They create long, complex underground burrows where they raise their young and escape to in case of danger. Due to their small size and relatively defenseless nature, they are acutely aware of any threats that may transpire. Often, they scope out a location they can flee to before grazing. Wild rabbits spend most of their life within the same 10-acre area, so they know it well. They can have several litters a year, with female rabbits being able to get pregnant again within 4 days of giving birth. Oh, that would suck. Rabbits who have been domesticated are often affectionate and caring towards their human companions. In nature, they live to be about 2 due to predators, but in the right environment, they can live to be 10. Unfortunately, this is often not the case. Rabbits are raised for their meat, fur, young, and for laboratory use. In 2017, a 2017 Census of Agriculture stated that 4,000 farms in the United States sold 500,000 rabbits nationally. The American Anti-Vivisection Society reports that in 2004, the number of laboratory rabbits in use was over 260,000, and some 43% of those individuals were subjected to tests that caused pain, distress, or both, sometimes without any drug relief. These creatures are prime test subjects because their small size and gentle nature. Drugs, chemicals, and medical devices are commonly tested on rabbits. These tests can be extremely stressful, harmful, and sometimes deadly. Substances such as dishwashing detergent are often dripped into their eyes, which causes irritation displayed as swelling, discharge, and redness. They are kept in tiny cages and often display signs of extreme stress such as self-mutilation, aggression, weight loss, and tremoring. The Humane Society of the United States reports that over 2 million rabbits are raised in the United States annually for their flesh. They are kept in cruel conditions similar to those of chickens, in tiny wire cages that hurt their feet, crowded in with other rabbits, and covered in their own feces. They endure this existence for an average of 10 to 12 weeks for white rabbits, or 8 to 9 months for Rex rabbits, before being trucked off to slaughter, which is an absolutely brutal process. Rabbits are allowed to be killed in quite literally any manner. Since they aren't classified as livestock, they are exempt from... Since they aren't classified as livestock, they're exempt from the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act, which none of these methods are actually humane. Methods of murdering rabbits range from bludgeoning them with a steel pipe, slitting their throat and allowing them to bleed out, shooting them, and decapitation. Globally, the United Nations reports that 1 billion rabbits are killed for their fur. Rabbit fur is primarily produced in Europe. France alone produces 70 million rabbit pellets a year. The rabbits specifically bred for their fur are Angoras, which are a different type of breed than those typically used for meat or laboratory testing. Once they've reached a mature age, at about 2 months old, they will be stunned by a blow to the head. Incisions are made in their skin, then they are hung and bled out before their fur is ripped off. The rabbits about to be slaughtered are able to clearly see this entire process. Some rabbits have their fur pulled off of their live body, which is an unimaginably painful process. Can you imagine being trucked in a house with hundreds or thousands of others of your species and have this other species that is huge, ginormous, with very scary tools of destruction that right before your eyes very violently and consciously murder all of your kind in front of you, and there's nothing you can do about it? That is literally a horror movie scene, and that is a reality happening to these animals right now. They don't deserve that. They deserve much better than that. Like, I don't know, to not be slaughtered, for example, especially in a slaughterhouse. Goodness. Okay. Rabbits are the third most commonly euthanized companion animals. Many people purchase rabbits as Easter presents or for their children's birthdays. Once they're no longer desired, they're often abandoned. Rabbits are bred by backyard breeders or rabbit mills. They are then sold in pet stores, carnivals, and fairs. Proper education of how to take care of a rabbit is almost never supplied. This often leads to their mistreatment and death. There is ways to very lovingly and compassionately care for a rabbit. That exists too. Most people just don't know or just don't actually have the time and aren't willing to learn. But it is possible to rescue a rabbit and just have a great time together and care for them, and they can live to be 10. They're very, very sweet. They just need love. Just like all of us, they just need some love. Alrighty. I need water. Foxes. Foxes are solitary animals in the same family as wolves and dogs. When they're young, they live in burrows with their families until they've grown. During their youth, they are extremely vulnerable and rely on their parents for survival. Their cubs are both blind and deaf at birth and take 11 to 14 days on average to first open their eyes. They're just little helpless babies. Their mother stays with them in the den at this time, and their father finds food for the family. They act as a family unit for 6 to 7 months. During this time, they are loyal to one another and are often very playful. They've been known to steal balls from golf courses to play with. They are nocturnal animals, venturing out primarily after sunset. Foxes move similarly to cats and some love to climb trees, even sleeping in them sometimes. They have sensitive whiskers, making them acutely aware of their environment. It's even been theorized that they use the Earth's electromagnetic field to hunt. Foxes are routinely hunted for sport, killed for being a nuisance, and raised for their fur. Sometimes award money is given to the hunter who has killed the most foxes. Dogs are used in this hunt as well. In fox penning, packs of dogs are released to hunt foxes in a closed-off area, meaning the foxes have literally no chance of escaping. They are chased to the point of absolute exhaustion and then literally ripped apart. Some brave activists sabotage these hunts to the best of their abilities, and I think they're really badass for doing so. Foxes raised for their fur are brutally murdered and confined throughout their life. Many nations have banned fur farming, but still import fur from countries who allow it. China and Poland are massive producers of fur. A majority of the fur produced comes from factory farms. The way they are raised is similar to that of rabbits, in extremely close quarters with others in very small, filthy cages that limit them from exhibiting any natural behavior. Foxes are typically raised for 7 months before being electrocuted to death in order to not taint their fur. This is often done with an electric rod shoved in their anus. Videos of that are horrifying, as you would probably imagine they would be. We live in a day and age where we do not need to be wearing fur. Like, unless you are someone who is living solely off the land and does not have access to modern wares, or doesn't have the money for it, or whatever it may be, they're just, to buy fur is a fashion statement. It's gross. Like, these animals lose their whole lives for like some trim on your coat. What? That's, it's just so unjustifiable unless you're in a survival situation where you are living off the land and the only access to clothes you have is animal skin. Even then, but, you know, necessity, very different than what most people are doing. Very different from what companies like Canada Goose are doing. Like, we don't need to be wearing fur. We don't. We just choose to. And an argument that often comes up is, yeah, well, vegan fur is just plastic. And that's often true. And I think that there needs to, well, honestly, just no one necessarily needs to be wearing it. But I also, I enjoy like the fake fur products because they're fuzzy and they're nice. So it'd be nice if alternatives could be made that no one has to die for, that also isn't like a petroleum product, you know? There's definitely a lot of room for growth and improvement there. But that doesn't mean we should go back to abusing animals. Like, that's not what that means. It just means there needs to be improvement in the technology, in the fashion industry, but it doesn't need to be reliant on the exploitation and abuse and murder of these precious animals who just want to live their lives. Alrighty. Mink. Minks generally live around lakes, streams, or ponds with nearby forest cover. They make their homes in hollow logs or dig dens in the earth. They are known to add bedding to their dens with grass, leaves, or fur from their prey. Similar to foxes, mink primarily live in solitary, coming together to mate and raise a family for a period of months. When content, minks sometimes purr. Minks are primarily used for their fur. In the United States, approximately 275 small family farms, as the industry calls them, produce 3 million mink fur pelts a year. Wisconsin alone produces a third of this total. According to the Fur Commission USA, today's farm-raised mink are among the world's best cared for livestock. Good nutrition, comfortable housing, and prompt veterinary care have resulted in livestock very well suited to the farm environment. A video on the same page about the Zimbabwean mink farm shows what they deem as top-tier quality. This video shows mink kept in tiny sheds, being fed ground-up leftover animal flesh in a mush and being handled in a way that is clearly distressing for them. They are talked about purely as commodities because that's what they are to them. The fact that this is their best standard is despicable. All of this for around $40 a pelt on average. Imagine if your life was $40. If someone was willing to cage you for your entire life and then kill you for $40. I literally just got handed half that today, like off the street. Gross. Minks are semi-aquatic animals, but in these tiny cages they are kept in, they have never had the opportunity to swim. In some farms, they are barely able to turn around, while in others they have enough room to pace around a bit. This type of living confinement for the entirety of their life can drive them insane, causing self-mutilation and cannibalism. This is why they're often kept separate from other mink. At 6 months old, they are killed. Common methods of killing mink to preserve their fur include anal and oral electrocution, suffocation, skinning them alive, and snapping their neck. This is information you won't find on the fur industry pages that talk about how important animal welfare is to them. 50 to 60 mink are murdered to produce one mink coat. Dozens of deaths for fashion. All right, that's going to be where we call it today. It's going to be a bit shorter episode than usual, but honestly, my throat hurts. So next week we have rats and mice, non-human primates, dogs, cats. Oh wow, the dog section is long. Oh my god. Dogs, cats. That might be where we stop that there. Yeah, all those animals that I just listed are probably going to be what is coming up for next week. Hopefully nothing crazy comes up and I actually am here to talk to you guys again next week. I'm really hoping that will be the case. Life is crazy, but I'm gonna do my best to be here and present and provide this for you guys because it means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to some of you too. So please, give this a like. Maybe follow the podcast if you want to. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll follow my channel. Leave any comments below of any thoughts or questions you may have. And if there's anyone that you feel would benefit from seeing this video, please share it with them or this podcast. I appreciate you a lot, and I hope that you have a really wonderful day and that this information empowers you to think about animals that are not humans in a different light. We're all just here having an experience, and our experiences often vary differently. And the difference of a human and a non-human animal, well, it's very vast depending on what animal you're talking about, but it can also be true for us humans having completely different lives. So I think that if we were to look at everyone just with respect and love as like, oh wow, that's another being having a unique experience and their life is special and sacred and deserves goodness, kindness, compassion, then we'd be in a very different place in the world. Certainly wars wouldn't be happening if we all looked at each other with more compassion. Yeah. Well, I hope that you have a beautiful day, and thank you for being here. I love you.